Paul?" Janice asked, alarmed. "What's wrong?" "I don't know," I said. "I don't know anything for sure, but I'm going to find out if I can." Four. The aftermath of the shooting was a three-ring circus with the governor in one ring, the prison in another, and poor brain-blasted Percy Wetmore in the third. And the ringmaster? Well, the various gentlemen of the press took turns at that job. They weren't as bad then as they are now, they didn't allow themselves to be as bad, but even back then before Geraldo and Mike Wallace and the rest of them, they could gallop along pretty good when they really got the bit in their teeth. That was what happened this time, and while the show lasted, it was a good one. But even the liveliest circus, the one with the scariest freaks, funniest clowns, and wildest animals, has to leave town eventually. This one left after the Board of Inquiry, which sounds pretty special and fearsome, but actually turned out to be pretty tame and perfunctory. Under other circumstances, the governor undoubtedly would have demanded someone's head on a platter, but not this time. His nephew by marriage, his wife's own blood kin, had gone crackers and killed a man. Had killed a killer, there was that, at least, and thank God for it, but Percy had still shot the man as he lay sleeping in his cell, which was not quite sporting. When you added in the fact that the young man in question remained just as mad as a March hare, you could understand why the governor only wanted it to go away, and as soon as possible. Our trip to Warden Moore's house and Harry Terwilliger's truck never came out. The fact that Percy had been straitjacketed and locked in the restraint room during the time we were away never came out. The fact that William Wharton had been doped to the gills when Percy shot him never came out, either. Why would it? The authorities had no reason to suspect anything in Wharton's system but half a dozen slugs. The coroner removed those, the mortician put him in a pine box, and that was the end of the man with Billy the Kid tattooed on his left forearm. Good riddance to bad rubbish, you might say. All in all, the uproar lasted about 2 weeks. During that time I didn't dare fart sideways, let alone so take a day off to investigate the idea I'd gotten at my kitchen table on the morning after all the upheavals. I knew for sure that the circus had left town when I got to work on a day just shy of the middle of November, the 12th, I think, but don't hold me to that. That was the day I found the piece of paper I'd been dreading on the middle of my desk, the dough on John Coffey. Curtis Anderson had signed it instead of Hal Moore's, but of course it was just as legal either way, and of course it had needed to go through Hal in order to get to me. I could imagine Hal sitting at his desk in administration with that piece of paper in his hand, sitting there and thinking of his wife, who had become something of a 9 days wonder to the doctors at Indianola General Hospital. She'd had her own dough papers handed to her by those doctors, but John Coffey had tommed them up. Now, however, it was Coffey's turn to walk the Green Mile, and who among us could stop it? Who among us would stop it? The date on the death warrant was November 20th. 3 days after I got it, the 15th, I think, I had Janice call me in sick. A cup of coffee later I was driving north in my badly sprung but otherwise reliable Ford. Janice had kissed me on my way and wished me good luck. I'd thanked her but no longer had any clear idea what good luck would be, finding what I was looking for or not finding it. All I knew for sure is that I didn't feel much like singing as I drove. Not that day. By 3 that afternoon I was well up in the Ridge country. I got to the Purdom County Courthouse just before it closed, looked at some records, then had a visit from the sheriff, who had been informed by the county clerk that a stranger was poking in amongst the local skeletons. Sheriff Catlett wanted to know what I thought I was doing. I told him. Catlett thought it over and then told me something interesting. He said he'd deny he'd ever said a word if I spread it around, and it wasn't conclusive anyway, but it was something, all right. It was sure something. I thought about it all the way home, and that night there was a lot of thinking and precious little sleeping on my side of the bed. The next day I got up while the sun was still just a rumor in the east and drove downstate to Trapingus County. I skirted around Homer Cribbus, that great bag of guts and waters, speaking to Deputy Sheriff Rob McGee instead. McGee didn't want to hear what I was telling him. Most vehemently didn't want to hear it. At one point I was pretty sure he was going to punch me in the mouth so he could stop hearing it, but in the end he agreed to go out and ask Klaus Dederich a couple of questions. Mostly, I think, so he could be sure I wouldn't. He's only 39, but he looks like an old man these days, McGee said, and he don't need a smart-ass prison guard who thinks he's a detective to stir him up just when some of the sorrow has started to settle. You stay right here in town. I don't want you within hailing distance of the Dederick farm, but I want to be able to find you when I'm done talking to Klaus. If you start feeling restless, have a piece of pie down there in the diner. It'll weight you down. I ended up having 2 pieces, and it was kind of heavy. When McGee came into the diner and sat down at the counter next to me, I tried to read his face and failed. Well? I asked. Come on home with me, we'll talk there, he said. This place is a mite too public for my taste.